and we're going to go ahead and go live. First off, I want to thank everybody for taking time out to be here today. Of course, this is our Revolution Colorado Springs and CD5's virtual members meeting for June. I'm going to real quick share my screen and hope everybody will be able to see it. But basically, it's the visual of the Our Revolution mission statement. All right, so why won't, there we go. Now you'll notice it's a triangle. Can everybody see that?
Yep, it's up.
All right, triangle's up, all right. So basically this is a visual of the Our Revolution Colorado Springs mission statement. Our mission statement is to fight on progressive issues, to elect progressive champions, and for 2020 and beyond. When we look at the individual sides of our pyramid, the first one, of course, is fighting for progressive issues. Our Revolution Colorado Springs does this through various ways, such as petitions, letter writing campaigns, rallies, and protests. We also do this, well, we used to do it through live events, but since COVID, we've had to kind of retool and find more creative ways to reach out to the community and fight for these progressive issues. One of the ways we did that was we put forward a 6-week webinar series on the progressive issues that are important to you, such as Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, and money in politics. Moving on to the second side of our triangle, electing progressive champions. We here at Our Revolution Colorado Springs at CD5 not only support electing progressive champions, we actually seek out, identify, and find quality candidates to run for office, as well as support and elect them. We again do this in various ways. One of the ways that we have is many of the people you'll hear from today, such as Ken, Lori, and Jillian, are endorsed by Our Revolution Colorado Springs. We also were instrumental in helping to orchestrate the national endorsement of our Senate candidate and progressive champion, Andrew Romanoff. And now going on to our last and final third side of our mission, visual mission statement. This is building a progressive party. In our written mission statement, we listed as for 2020 and beyond, because really this is where we actually take back the power. In truth, we're not coming to transform the party or to take back the party. We are coming to be the party. And we do that by volunteering to be precinct organizers. And I want to encourage everybody here on this call who may be watching on Facebook, please step up and volunteer to be a precinct organizer. The great thing about precinct organizers, I'm one of them myself, is you can really put in as little or as much time as you want to. But the best part is that you get to actually vote for all Colorado Democratic Party officers above you. This is how we actually become the party, by putting in our progressive candidates. Does anybody know, is Electra on? Does anybody see Electra? Hold on here, let me see.
She jumped on for a minute and then jumped back off again.
Yeah, I promoted her to a panelist. I think she's
All right.
issues.
Anyhow, hopefully we'll get Electra back. She's going to speak a little bit more on this subject. But guys, this is one of the most important things that we can be doing right now, because the real work begins after the November election in fighting for our progressive issues and our progressive values. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jillian Freeland. Of course, Jillian is running for CD5. She is also a midwife. Can you imagine that? A candidate that actually has a second job. So Jillian, I'm going to try to bring you up on the screen and I'll let you take it away. You got about 3 minutes.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking your Sunday to talk politics with some big nerds and figure out how we can make change in this country to drive progressive policies and make sure that our economy works for everyone, that our health care is actually health care, and that my babies who are 2 and 4 years old have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink and healthy food to eat, and know that their world is not going to be rocked by devastating storm after storm, because we can take action on climate change. And as we are faced with this huge storm of economic fallout and healthcare issues, we have an unprecedented opportunity to take action on climate change, because we need to create jobs, and we can create those jobs through a federal program designed to install and maintain and manufacture the renewable resources we need in order to combat climate change. Because we know that we have to take action, that the course that we are on is not leading to justice for everyone or protecting the rights that are enshrined in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And so that's why this progressive energy, this grassroots action is going to be what drives change in this country, so that we do not continue down the rabbit hole that is the Trump administration, so that we move in a direction that benefits people, not corporations, and so that we elect a new generation of legislators so that we can protect the values that truly align with the America envisioned by our forefathers: equal justice and protection under the law. And so that's why I'm running, because our country aspired to much more than we are accomplishing, and only by pushing forward with new electeds and new activists joining the fight are we going to achieve the change that our country needs in order to move forward, because we cannot go backwards. We cannot. And progressive policies such as those pushed by Bernie Sanders are what activated me to get into this fight. I had never knocked doors before Bernie Sanders ran, but his message of inclusion and a government that works for everyone, not just those who have big money to pump into politics, reached me. And it has reached so many of you, obviously. We have an unprecedented number of people who are stepping up to make calls, to send texts, to talk to their neighbors and have those scary conversations. And I commend each and every one of you. I had to go out today to do the shopping and the errands that it takes to keep a household running. And of course, I had my mask on and maintained my social distancing. But I had a really neat moment today, because there was a couple behind me that I am guilty of making a prejudgment. They didn't have masks on. And so I was kind of like mad and in my liberal rage, as people would say. And then I started talking to them, and we actually connected. And the reason I bring this up is because we can still bring this country back together. We don't have to stay in this divided fight forever. Above all else, we are humans, and we're in this together. So please continue having those hard conversations and be gentle with each other, because coming into these conversations with a confrontational fight kind of attitude doesn't create change. So doing things like this webinar are great for developing policies, but I also encourage you to learn more about communication so that we can be really effective and we can bring our country back together and not continue with the divisive rhetoric and maintaining systematic racism and unequal socioeconomic systems, because we cannot continue. This is not a sustainable form of government. So please continue this work, whether it's by supporting a campaign directly or just having a conversation with your neighbor that might make you a little uncomfortable. I know you can do it. We all can. So I am so pleased to be here on this panel alongside all of these other wonderful candidates. The amount of activists that I see on my ballot just brings me joy, and being able to vote for my friends who I know are going to fight for our communities is one of the most thrilling moments in my life. And so just thank you to everybody who is running, and we can do this.
Jillian, thank you so very much. John, do we have any questions for Jillian?
Yeah, I just got one question. This is going to be a question I think I'm going to ask for to every candidate, because I feel like it's a very pressing issue and something that I think has been brought to the forefront in the last couple of weeks. We see massive protests going on for the last 2 weeks, starting with the death of George Floyd, but going on way before that, right? You know, the racism that has existed in this country has basically existed since, I'd say, this country's was, you know, founded. So my question is ultimately is, obviously each one of you is running for a position that's pretty different, but my overall question is, what would you plan on doing, like personally in your elected position, to help fight systemic racism in this country?
So police brutality has been protested for decades, if not centuries. And the traction that this movement has gained in the last couple of weeks is phenomenal. And I actually started preparing for this run a couple of years ago. I joined some county boards for the purpose of educating myself. And one of those boards was the Community Corrections Board. And so I learned a lot about the state of our criminal justice system. And I know none of you will be surprised to hear this, but it's not just. And so when we hear these discussions about how police interact, especially with our communities of color, we need to recognize that this is not an issue that exists in a vacuum. And one of the difficulties with this movement is that it's hard to communicate the full message through little short sound bites like defund the police. If you dig deeper into that statement, most people agree with what it says. What it means is not putting the tasks of a mental health provider onto a police officer, or the skills that are required for addiction treatment onto a police officer. Our budgets have gotten so big, and the expectations we place on police officers are unrealistic. And so we cannot fully train them in terms of combating racial biases, or how to truly have a compassionate interaction with a person who is mentally ill or suffering from addiction. And so this comes back to that communication skills that I have called on you all to develop, because it's too easy to shut down a conversation with buzzwords. When people already have a prejudged idea of what defund the police is, and they're not hearing the rest of that conversation, we can't make progress. And so I encourage you all, move past all of these 3-word explanations for what we want to do. Dig deeper. Say more than Medicare for all. Say more than Green New Deal or defund the police. Dig in, help people learn so they understand what we're fighting for, and so that they know that what we're fighting for benefits them too.
Jillian, thank you. That's a great response. Do we have any more questions for Jillian?
I think it's good, again, just for the sake of time. But yeah, I am interested in hearing that same, people's opinions on for each person when they get to that stage. So.
Well, and I'll just say thank you for hosting this. I can't stay the whole time this afternoon, so much love to you all, and I'm sure I will be seeing you in another webinar soon. But keep up the fight, take those deep breaths, wash your hands, and take care of each other, okay? I'll see y'all soon.
Yes, Jillian, thank you for joining us today. We actually will be seeing you again very soon. You'll be on our next call Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Guys, find that link, RSVP. And thank you again, Jillian, for joining us.
Yeah.
Guys, next we're going to hear from, actually, let me see, let me get you off. Guys, next we're going to hear from a labor leader running for County Commission 3, Ken Showers.
Hello, brothers and sisters. How you doing today? You can just give me a thumbs up if you're doing well. Hey, my name is Ken Shower, president of the Colorado Springs Area Labor Council, treasurer of IBW Local 113, and the vice president of the Colorado AFL-CIO. Labor is very much near and dear issue to me, obviously. What's really cool about progressive movement is it is tied completely with the labor movement. So the cause of labor is the cause of the progressive movement. when we talk about racial justice and everything else that is really plaguing our country, it has deep roots that is tied intimately with labor. So a lot of people don't realize that, like, Rosa Parks was trained by the AFL, and that's why she had the support and the coverage that she needed the day that she refused to move to the back of the bus. Martin Luther King, years before he marched, was addressing the AFL-CIO's conventions. So the issue of racial justice and progressive causes is tied directly to the movement of labor. And it's a continuous battle. It's one of those where we get to educate our members on a continuous basis, or we say, this is who we are, this is what we stand for. And consequently, and then the members slowly come around like, oh my goodness, I guess we should be doing this. So, and when you really think about it, slavery was definitely fundamentally a labor issue. And it's tough. But the nice thing about our revolution is it is a progressive cause. We're fighting for progressive, that which we stand for. It doesn't fit well into those little buzzwords like defund the police or Medicare for all, because of the fact that it gets a little wonkish and it's a little more cerebral. And you just have to understand that as progressives, that sometimes we can come off as a little bit up here. But the beauty of it is what we're trying to work on is for everybody. So when we're fighting for paid sick leave for people, or if we're fighting for maternity leave for mothers, or even to have access to places where women or parents can breastfeed their children in a nice, clean, safe environment. These are issues which deal with equity and justice, and it also deals with labor. So anyways, I think I've babbled enough about how those two are inextricably linked. So I'd like to, hey, John, is it okay if I tackle your question? You can just give me a thumbs up. All right. So on dealing with what can the county commissioner do to help deal with racial justice and racial equality? This is fun because what Jillian said was very, very, very important, but also one of the things that we need to be doing in these various different offices, especially executive branch style offices like what the county commissioner does, is to go through our statutes and rules and regulations and rules governing for the county and for how zoning and everything else is handled. And we need to go through it with a fine tooth comb, and we need to get rid of anything that smacks of racism. So when they do special zoning for real estate that's based upon the number of Black people that live in the area, clearly that needs to be gotten rid of. We also need to look at ways that we can prevent perceived racism from existing, and the problems that can be caused with that. And some of the policies and programs that I've looked at that have worked very well through the years was like even county-based or state-based insurance to prevent white flight. So so your mortgage value isn't impacted by Blacks moving into the area. And I have to say that kind of tongue in cheek because the numbers aren't there. That doesn't impact the value of houses, but there's this perceived thing. So states and counties have actually been able to make money off of people who are scared about their home values going down. And that works for affordable housing too. So we can actually address multiple things with an insurance plan that would keep people comfortable in their houses and allow for us to build affordable housing in areas. And affordable housing, of course, is very much linked to the whole progressive social justice thing. So I don't know, there's a lot there that we need to do. We need to look at our judicial system, our judicial review. I would love to see, we have a state funded judicial review that actually rates judges and passing or failing. And I'd love to see their information on the ballot. So when you see Judge Schmuckatelli over here is up for, do we wish to retain him? He's got 2 out of 5 stars. It's like, people be like, no, I don't want to keep that guy. And I think that also in those judge statutes, they have a 155-page document that dictates exactly how they rate judges and everything else. We need to throw in things on, are they being racially fair and just? Are they giving a poor Black man 168 years in prison for the exact same thing they just gave somebody 2 weeks worth of probation for, in those cases that we read about and we see about. So if we see a judge has a clear pattern in this crap, I say we hold them accountable and we put their name on the ballot next to their record and let people make the decision on that. So I think an informed electorate is a smart electorate. So anyways, my name's Ken Schauer, running for County Commissioner, District 3.
Ken, thank you for bringing up judges. It's a often overlooked part of the ballot, but voting on those judges is so important as to whether or not we retain them. And we really got to look at those reports that you were mentioning. So thank you for mentioning that. Going real quick back to housing, I do have another quick question for you. Here in Colorado, El Paso County courts are opening up Monday. Evictions are going to be starting to process through. Does the county have a plan in place to deal with what may be a large increase in homeless population right here in El Paso County?
No, they do not. Not that I've been able to find. And homelessness is very much a public health and safety issue, which falls under the purveyance of the county commissioners. And I think that their current plan appears to be everything, all the digging I've been doing appears to be, hopefully it just goes away on its own. So, and I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's a solid approach. So there's much that we need to be doing there, Anthony.
I would suggest the first thing we need to be doing is working to try to keep as many people as possible from becoming homeless. And then, start to build up our support networks for those who do become homeless.
The number one indicator on how successful a homeless program is rapid rehousing, stopping the problem before it becomes systemic. And that's just, I mean, the data is overwhelming on that. So, all right. Thank you. That was a good question.
Time. Guys, next up, we're going to hear from HD60 candidate Lori Boydston. Lori hails from Salida, Colorado. She's running out there in the rural mountain areas of CD5. Guys, please welcome Lori Boydston. Let me see if I can bring her onto the screen. Lori, go ahead and let's see.
Hi, I'm Lori Boydston. I live in Salida, and I'm running for House District 60, which is 4 counties up here in the mountains. It includes Custer County, most of Fremont County, Chaffee County, where I live, and Park County. And the district has been very red. Jim Wilson, who holds the seat right now, term limits out. And my opponent is a law enforcement officer. And so I think I have a chance of swinging those numbers a little bit. And of course, that's only going to happen with lots of help. And lots of help does mean contributions, but it also means people that will send out postcards, do text banking, little phone calling, maybe even help door knocking or putting flyers or palm cards out, but not sure we're going to be doing any door-to-door. On top of that, I am a delegate to the National Convention for Bernie, and that's been taking up lots of my time. I've been volunteer for Andrew Romanoff. Go Andrew. We got to help him to win this. He's our guy, and he needs to go to DC and really represent Coloradans and the country. And I stand on those same issues. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, broadband is also a very serious one that we need to take into account in the rural mountains. People complain about not being able to even have access. Forget about that. It's terrible. Internet. Now, right here in Salida, we're doing pretty well. It's not too bad. But the rest of the district, that's what I hear all the time. So if you are in House District 60 area, please contact me at LoriHD60.com, and that's Lori. I spell it the short version, LoriHD60.com. And you can also get a hold of me from email at LoriHD60@yahoo.com. So write that down. You know, if you're a millennial, put it right in your phone right now, and make sure that we can help this district to turn blue. Custer County is normally about 85% Republican voting, and hoping to make a little bit of an impact there. Chaffee County goes purple, and Custer County and Park County are both about 60% Republican voting, but has so many rural people that there's no way to go knocking on doors and making sure you're not gonna, yeah, I just keep saying tomatoes, no bullets, please, just tomatoes. So, but but I will be fighting for the people. The billionaires, the corporations will not be welcome at my door. I will fight for what the people want, and I want to be able to stay connected with all the people. I am talking with Republicans as well, and I think it's kind of neat when we find common ground. I am doing this because I was inspired by Bernie. I've never run before, never was even a twinkle in my eye. I like being part of the Democrat Party to help keep pushing it as left as we can go, and for the people. I've got 3 children and 5 grandchildren that are very close by. And I, like Jillian is saying, I want them to be able to breathe clean air and drink clean water and have an earth that really works for them. So let's get 100% renewable energy and make a just transition for the fossil fuel workers. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Anthony, for organizing this, and all the other panelists. Good luck in all of your runs for office.
Lori, thank you for keeping the progressive voice alive out there in rural Colorado in HD 60. John, do we have any questions for Lori?
There's a quick question. So, you know, obviously it's always different in rural communities. You know, police brutality and discrimination still obviously exist in those communities as well. I'm curious what you've seen as far as like protest movements in Salida, and again, as well as what you would plan on trying to implement into your policies to tackle systemic racism.
Well, I believe that when we have equality in medical care, when we have equality in housing ability, when we have equality in education, and our rural area, thank you to Andrew Romanoff, has gotten some great monies for our new schools in the rural districts, so we can be more equal. I like to think that if we never have to call out the color of people's skin, instead of just already knowing everybody is equal through a Medicare for All program, a Green New Deal that is going to make sure that that everybody is taken care of. Our bottom line is that everybody can be more equal, and start out with the basics of what everybody needs, which is where a lot of the racism and social injustices come from. So those are the things that I'll be focusing on to help the people and help be equal.
Lori, I have
Did
one
I
more.
answer your question, John? I'm not sure if I got it all.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's always, I think, there's always a inherent, I think, bias, or at least there has been inherent bias because, you know, society has been built up to, you know, or especially specifically also, you know, police unions and I think police ideology in this country has a clear history of racial discrimination. And although, yeah, I do agree that you can tackle a lot of that through other programs, social programs. I'm curious as well that there's still going to be this. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the cure-all for trying to eliminate, you know, racial bias in position for people in positions of power or have access to, you know, very large ammunition stocks of you know, that they maybe don't need to have. So Anthony, sorry, did you say you had another question?
I do have another question for Lori. You know, one of the ways that we can deal with social injustice, especially against our brothers and sisters of color, marginalized communities, indigenous peoples, is by ending the prison for profit system here in America. And it thrives very much so right here in Colorado. And we can only start locally and do what we can do locally. So I would ask you, Lori, if you were elected, would you support ending prison for profit here locally in Colorado?
Oh, you bet. Of course. It's it's just the obvious move to stay progressive and make sure that people are equal. And the billionaires are running our country into the ground through that system and through war too, which also is disproportionately sending Black and brown people over to die for the billionaires. So I'll be, the best that I can in Colorado, be fighting for that. It's not, that might be more of a federal level kind of thing, but let's start with each of the states and the prisons, although we've got the most prisons in Fremont County. So not something that I know anything firsthand about, thank goodness. But I'm so willing to take suggestions and make sure that I'm on the side of the prison industrial complex not advancing any further and getting back to federal programs of our prison systems and state programs and not private systems.
Yeah, no, most definitely. We've got to take the money out of the equation. And
Ken wants to ask a question there.
The profit. Ken's got a question. Let me go to Ken. Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to flip on my labor hat for a minute. As you see, recently we've had a major fight to make sure that WINS employees actually have collective bargaining at the state level and get codified in our Constitution. And we've had a lot of good representatives putting forth on that. That impacts a lot of people directly in your area. We have high union density, but a lot of them are prison guards and other people of that in those lines of work. How do you feel about prison guard unions, our unions that represent prison guards?
Well, I'm all for unions. I think that we need unions to be able to bargain for people that can't do it for themselves. Not everybody can negotiate their wages and their benefits. It's best if somebody can represent those people. Some people can stand up for themselves, but not everyone. So yes, we need to strengthen unions. And if you're asking as far as like the union that is from private industry, there's got to be a way to change that over to a public and type of industry and still have a union, no?
Yeah, I'd like to say something, if that's all right.
Yes, go ahead. And who is this speaking?
Oh, sorry, give me a minute. Yes, my name is Anthony Timmons. I'm an Our Revolution member. There's a couple of things that have been said. By the way, I'm interested in hearing what the candidates have said. But when you're mentioning trade unions, I've had a little bit of experience in reading in this. Are you still? You guys are still with me? Hello, right? Yes.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. When you mentioned I don't specifically know about Colorado unions of warder guards, but I live in the UK, and here in the UK there was a massive strike with guards in prisons, and it was also in solidarity with prisoners themselves. And this happened in 2008. And even so much so that during the strike, they would bring food into the prisons. And before you say, okay, that's Europe or that's Britain, that's a different place, et cetera, I think workers are kind of, they're not in the same conditions, but I mean, they are the same all around. So I think that's very different than police unions, which are more like guilds and have a very, very different role than trade unions. So I don't know. I don't know what can be built around that, but yeah. I think prisons have been developing in the States or sort of de-evolving for quite some time. So I mean, the condition can be very, very different in terms of solidarity. But I think there's a lot to be built with there. Sorry, I just thought I'd add that.
No, thank you for your comment. That's why we're here.
Okay, cool. That's why I'm here, because I'm lonely and I want to talk.
Ken, did you have a response to that?
Yes, I do.
Sorry, Ben.
Go ahead.
Hey, you said your name was Anthony, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm kind of a labor boss here in Colorado, so I think I can speak with a little bit of authority on this one. Right now, federal law is broken into two major categories that cover our labor unions. One is the trade side, which is the privately held unions, your electricians, your plumbers, your pipe fitters. The other one is public sector unions, and that would be your teachers, your firefighters, your prison guards, and everything else. And they have very different rules governing and very different laws that pertain to each one of them. And consequently, shows of solidarity between the two different groups can be strained because the focus of what the trade unions want can sometimes be different than the public sector. Earlier, somebody was asking about police unions in particular. Police unions refuse to work with all the other unions. They like to do their little guild. They like to be insular. Every point of outreach I've ever done to sit down with them has been rebuffed. So honestly, when it comes right down to it, they work their own agenda. I don't support their agenda. And they work heavily with the right wing to make sure that they're insulated in special carve-outs just for their union and for their members. And it's not fair to the rest of all labor. So, but prison guards, yes, I would love to see some acts of solidarity where they stand up and demand better conditions, not only for themselves, but also for the inmates. So, and if they decide to do that, I will be right there on the front lines waving a picket sign with them. So,
Cool.
All right.
So, what are your goals in elected office as a trade union rep? What would you reckon on doing once elected?
Well, for every step of the way, you fight for the rights of workers. So, looks like we lost him. So,
Hey, thank you, Ken. Guys, we are joined now by 2016 Bernie delegate, 2020 Bernie delegate, Bernie inspired candidate and chair of El Paso County Democratic Party. Please welcome Electra Johnson. Electra, thank you for joining us on your busy day today.
Hey, how are you? Sorry about that. I had some issues with my old computer getting online. And then as soon as I got online, my son had a big old fit in the background. So sorry about that.
That's all right. We know how busy you are.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how we can get involved being a precinct organizer.
Yeah, so I am running for Senate District 12, but that hasn't been my main focus. My main focus is really the most exciting part of getting my ballot and turning it in is seeing Ken's name on the ballot. I ran for his seat in 2016 and got inspired to run on Valentine's Day, actually in 2016, because of Bernie. And Bernie's message really hit home with me on a lot of levels. One of them being specifically Medicare for all. We had some health issues in our family, and the cost of healthcare, in addition to childcare, in addition to education and student loan debt, and you just name it, from labor issues across the board to being prepared for a green economy and actually dealing with issues around climate change. And also injustice. I mean, not only is police brutality and racial profiling one of the most just heinous things that's going on in our country right now, but also if you just look back, the number of women with healthcare, like Black women who are literally like dying in childbirth, it's like 44 to 100,000 versus 13 to the 100,000 for white women. So healthcare is disproportionately impacts people. Also, environmental justice issues really impact people of color specifically. And we've seen COVID is another example of something that's really impacted communities of color specifically. So I got involved because of Bernie. And when he said in 2016 to step up and run for something, I did. I knocked on 35,000 doors then. We're not doing the same thing this time around. We're doing some very different kind of organizing. But Ken has been somebody that has mentored me, and I have just been so grateful for his support as well, and the support of the unions in our county, because we've really got to keep things rolling. Even our left legislators, we've got to make sure that they're voting for bills that support workers' rights all the time. There's a constant undermining, especially in counties like Lori Boydston's county or our county, where they're primarily fairly right-wing counties, and every single thing is looked at through the lens of the economy and not looked at through the lens of how it's impacting people. And even that isn't really looked at very clearly. Like, our homeless population has grown massively in the last 4 years. We had around, I think 2016, we had around 2,000 homeless people, and it's just blown straight up. And it continues to do so with evictions and things of that nature. So I think what Ken said specifically around rapid rehousing, also a continuum of care, is a really important thing. And quite honestly, one of the reasons we need Ken in our county commission is because he will be that voice of change. So I have to say I really support Ken specifically, and Jillian too. And they were both on my ballot, which to me, that's one of the best feelings in the world, is to have all these positions filled with people on the ballot. We worked really hard to fill every single seat, which we did in El Paso County. The one seat we were unable to fill, and I probably spent 100 hours trying to fill it, was the seat for district attorney, which right now couldn't be more evident that we need somebody in that district attorney seat. So we are going for 2 different alternative options. One is looking for an unaffiliated candidate to run as district attorney. We may need 1,000 signatures for that. So we did try to get a Democrat. I had 6 people lined up, and every single one of them stepped in and dropped out. So that inequity with citizen oversight, with police profiling, even with our police departments here doing, there was a article a few months ago about the Fight Club in the police department, where they were like getting prisoners to fight, which is just, that abuse of power needs to be called out. And I believe we do have good police officers too, but on the other hand, when you are in a position of power, and we have a history of that in this county, from Makita abusing it to all the way through this Fight Club crap, we've got to have some civilian oversight, and that is of incredible importance in this county. So the district attorney race is something that I would say is not over yet. We may call on our revolution to help us get 1,000 signatures to get an unaffiliated voter or an unaffiliated attorney who's been registered in this county and Teller County for JD4 on the ballot. And if we don't get that, then we're going to go for a third alternative, which is trying to find a write-in candidate. So we're still not done with that. One of the things that I realized when I ran for chair is I got really damn tired of the Republicans in this county thinking they owned it all. And when they won the primary, they won the election. To me, if they're going to represent us, they're going to represent every single one of us, and they better work for it. They don't just get to come in and have a voice that is so singular in its nature. In fact, the county commission seat that Ken is running for has been used as a real bully pulpit. If you listen to any of their county commission meetings, the guy who's running for DA would be more regressive than our very regressive DA right now, who is in a county commission seat. So there's some real importance to focusing on seats like Ken's race. I got in to run for the Senate race specifically because my district overlaps with Ken's district, with Jillian's district, with all these other districts, to help pull together the coordinated campaign and to work for getting people elected as an organizing position. And I think we've been able to pull the party, while the party has been going further to the right, further to the right. In our county and in our state, there has been a movement to pull that party further and further to the left. And I wholeheartedly embrace that 100%, and I will fight like hell for the people of this state and of this county specifically. You had mentioned the prison for profit. I grew up in Huerfano County, and it's another one of those places where there is a prison for profit system. And literally we've seen in my lifetime, I was born in 1973, so it's a while ago, but it was you know, we saw Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty turned into Nancy Reagan's war on drugs, which is basically institutionalizing Jim Crow. And that's the fact that we were voting on slavery on our last ballot is astonishing right now. But there has been an underlying problem of racism in this country that just needs to be addressed. It's the ugly underbelly of this country. And, you know, even in my industry, I'm an architect, urban designer, and I do a lot of work for Colorado College. And they're still specifying products from companies like KI that is using prison labor. And that's, you know, that needs to be abolished. The fact that we have a pipeline into prisons, and especially for-profit prisons, where people are treated just astonishingly badly, as well as, you know, immigrants coming in who get put in with violent criminals. And so there's so many systematic issues that need to be addressed in this country, from environmental justice to healthcare justice to housing justice to, you just start going down the line, to labor justice. There's so many issues that need to be addressed.
Oh, I cut in here. Thank you so very much. We're actually starting to run a little bit long on time.
Sure.
Real quickly, in El Paso County, about how many precincts do we have missing precinct organizers right now?
So right now we're doing a pilot program where we're looking for precinct organizers. We've got over 100 where we need precinct organizers. And how we're trying to break that down is in all of our House districts, we're looking at the top number of precincts, the precincts by number of Democrats and number of voters, and targeting those first, because there can be a range of precinct organizers. But we need people. The number one thing you can do to get involved is to take this county of 600,000 people and take a chunk of it. In addition to being the El Paso County Democratic Party chair, Senate District 12 candidate, national delegate for Bernie, I'm also a precinct organizer in my precinct. And right now, one of the things that we need to get out to people, the message that is the most important, is if you didn't get a ballot right now in the primary, you're not getting one in November either. You will be seen as an inactive voter. So if you are a college student, like all the Colorado college students, and you got your ballot forwarded because you're getting your mail forwarded, ballots don't get forwarded, and you will not be getting one in November. So you need to go on govotecolorado.com and change your address to wherever you are at right now. You can remain a Colorado voter. We have people who are members of the military who remain Colorado voters if they're from Colorado. And that's one of the most important things that people can do, is make sure that you get your ballot for the primary, you cast it, and you also will have it in November.
Electra, that's such great information. Thank you so very much for sharing that with you.
You're so welcome.
Guys, we have one last candidate. She is actually in a contested primary. Please welcome House District 20 candidate Susan Crutchfield.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I am in a primary. Unfortunately, that wasn't the plan, but it's what happened. And I'm also in a red district myself. So I think it's great, as Jillian said, the traction that this movement is getting right now, because these issues that have been highlighted recently are the issues that have prompted me to run since as long as I could remember. I did an interview with you guys back in March where I was talking about restorative justice and housing first and all of these things that are glaring issues now that I have been wanting to tackle for a long time. So while this is a very trying and it can be a very bad time, it's also a very exciting time where people are listening to ideas like defund the police and Green New Deal and things like that. And even if the language can be inflammatory, at the very least it gets people talking, which is always a good thing. Everything starts with a conversation. So my campaign is all about spending money where we are going to see the biggest return as a society in solving social problems, as well as having a financial return. We are spending a lot of money on private prisons, $480 million annually just for the institutions alone. That's not even counting the salaries of the people inside of them, just the building, $480 million a year. And the worst part of that is it does not lower crime. It doesn't work. And not only that, it is just perpetuating the systemic racism because, you know, now we have the new slavery of prisoners working for a few cents an hour, making police uniforms of all things. And I have spoken with some of the prison guards who are actually members of the WINS labor union, and they want to be a part of the reform efforts too. Their own safety is on the line when they're working in these institutions, and they want people to be healed and corrected and not just locked up, especially for, say, a life sentence where they have nothing to lose. So they fear for their safety with these long sentences, and they are aware too that there are underlying traumatic issues and substance abuse issues that are causing people to reoffend. And that if we put our money instead into restorative justice programs, into mental health, into housing first, then we can stop spending all of this money perpetuating racism and perpetuating the harmful practice of prolonged incarceration, which does not solve the problem that it was intended to solve in the first place. So ultimately, I'm running because I want a healthy society. I want us to be spending our money wisely on things that will serve us as a society and as a community. I want to fight for restorative justice, housing first, more of a therapeutic model than a punitive model as far as the whole crime and punishment thing. And also, you know, just listening to the community and hearing what they have to say. I was very surprised to find that other members of my community were just as concerned about homelessness as I was, because I do have a very big district, and a lot of it is a wealthy, you know, wealthy parts of town. But they want to see that issue resolved too. They understand that it's not going to just magically go away, and that there are steps that we can take to actually resolve the problem and help people and come out on the other end as a happier and healthier society.
Susan, thank you so very much. John, do we have any questions for Susan?
Yeah, just one question. So, I know, yeah, I remember when we discussed back, seemed like forever ago. I mean, these months are just like years now.
3 lifetimes ago, at least. Back when we could still go to the library.
But yeah, you did mention restorative justice, and I'm curious about how that translates now as well to, like, you know, police force, because obviously police in a lot of places, and as we've seen, it exists in a very punitive manner. So would restorative justice, how would that translate to, you know, the police force in Colorado Springs or just across the country?
Yeah, so I agree with the concept of defunding and removing a lot of the money that they get to spend it in other areas. So that is one of the political vehicles that we have for keeping check on the police, is to keep a check on their funding. I think that if we were to reallocate some of the police budget towards restorative justice programs, then I think that would help a lot as far as the ability that they have to brutalize people. And also, I think that if the circumstances were different, say you get caught committing a crime and you know that there is a restorative justice path that you can take, as opposed to never seeing anyone you know or love for the next 10 years, you might be less inclined to run away or to try and fight, knowing that the stakes are a little more reasonable, right? A lot of the cases that we've heard recently have been people literally running away. And I think that part of that instinct to run, especially by people of color, is knowing that the justice system is not going to treat them fairly. And that if they get a sentence for the crime that they may or may not have committed, that it will be a very heavy-handed sentence, and it will have a huge impact on the rest of their life. And I think that if we were to tone that down a little and allow some room for forgiveness and growth, especially for the lower level petty crimes, like a fake $20 bill. I mean, come on. That is something that absolutely should have been dealt with in a much lighter manner. And I think that as we take steps towards restorative justice and away from, you know, punitive punishment, that we will see a natural inclination for things to go differently. There's no one thing that we can do today that will just put a stop to everything. I mean, even with the protests, there was still someone shot outside of a Wendy's, and it was called out as the wrong thing to do. But this is going to be a long road, but I'm here for it, and I'm here to keep working on it.
Susan, thank you. Do we have any other questions for Susan from anyone? John, do you see any in chat?
I just think, again, Mellon brings up a really good point too about the demilitarization of the police force across the country, especially here. I mean, when you have, from what I've gathered, pretty much peaceful protests going on. I mean, there might have been at worst a firecracker lit, but have that result with rubber bullets and tear gas is pretty insane. And I think that just, if anything, causes more issues and more distrust. And ultimately, the more of a need to change is when we see that sort of imbalance of force. So I think that's a really, really good point about basically trying to de-emphasize just punishment and making it so, you know, the police officers don't see citizens as sheep or prey, but as people that they need to, quote unquote, protect and serve.
Yes, exactly.
Colorado City Council just recently voted to remove, what's the term? Qualified immunity from police. Had you been in the House, would you have voted to support that bill?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think anybody should have immunity. They are not above the law that they are hired to enforce, and we need to make sure that they don't think that they are, and that everyone knows that they are not.
Yes, Colorado is among the first to make such a law, so we'll see how it spreads throughout the nation. Hopefully it will. Guys, we are approaching 1 hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to tell you about a couple of events that we have coming up. Starting with Monday, we will actually be the weekly Our Revolution call. Andrew Romanoff will be a guest speaker, so please RSVP to that event. You can find it on our Facebook page. Also, this coming Thursday, we'll be speaking with Jillian Freeland again, also Andrew Romanoff, a couple other candidates running here in Colorado. It'll be on our national statewide call with all chapters of Colorado. It'll be live streamed like this call here is. Guys, for those of you watching on Facebook, I want to invite you to react, comment, and share. And I want to thank everybody. Does anybody have any closing comments before we go ahead and end this meeting? All right. Well,
comment.
everybody.
Really fast. Thank you, Anthony, for all your work you've been doing on the Black Lives Matter stuff. I really appreciate that. And also everything that Our Revolution's been doing. So it's been good to have you guys in our corner. So thank you.
I also want to add that I think in this time and time moving forward, it's a fairly depressing time in politics, but I think everyone here and the people we work with are the leaders we need moving forward. So I'm glad that we're all here.
Yes, no time for despair. Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign. A few days later, endorsed Bernie Sanders. So we did a 6-week seminar on the important issues. Joe Biden wins the delegate count, thus more than likely the nomination. What do? We open an office in Colorado Springs. I almost forgot to tell everybody, yesterday we had the grand opening of the Our Revolution Colorado Springs right here in Colorado Springs. It is at 829 Circle Drive, Suite 5. Please call before you show up, as there is an outside door that's usually locked, or you could get there and then call me. But either way, please call ahead. Guys, we hope to use that office going forward for things as phone banks. We plan to hope to carry it at least till the end of this year so we can continue to fight for down ballot candidates right here locally in El Paso County. With that being said, I want to invite you guys to please go to ourrevolutioncs.com, click on that donate button and donate. And thank you again all for watching and joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, at some point, it looks like we've been dropped off and not been on Facebook. Yeah, let's go find that out. Okay, guys, everybody have a good night. I'm gonna go find out how long we were on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yep, bye-bye.